So, welcome everybody to Crisis and Business Continuity Management once again. Last week we were looking at crisis topologies and we tried to understand the implication of that for the management of crisis within organizations. So this week we're taking a little bit step further by looking at some of the theories, some of the relevant theories within the field of crisis management. And my center of attention today is on very interesting the theories of crisis management, which is the normal accident theories, and also we'll be looking at high reliability organization theories as well. So one of the things that I want to do is to look at some of their practicalities and some of their relevance as well. We'll look at the theoretical implications and their relevance for management of crisis within organizations and the implication of these theories for the field of crisis management as well. So without much ado, I think when my learning outcome, as I've mentioned, is to look at the ideas of normal accident theories. We're also looking at high reliability organization theories. We're looking at the meaning. We'll look at some of the key thinkers around these and some of the main characteristics of NAT and HRO. And I'll try to possibly explain some of the divergence between HRT, which is the high reliability organization theories, and normal accident theories. And of course, I will obviously try to draw on other points as well to kind of buttress the reasons why we're looking at this particular topic for the management of crisis within organizations. So the things that I really want to emphasize is this idea. You start to imagine, okay, what is normal? What do we consider to be normal within the concept of, so you're looking at normal accident theories now, but I think the key questions to ask is to look at, okay, what is considered to be normal. And I really want to emphasize that these ideas of normal accident theories actually started um, somewhere by Charles Perrow, and of course he was trying to look at the events aftermath of the disaster, which is the Three Mile Island nuclear power disasters in 1979. And so he started to write the papers around the disasters and introduced these concepts of technological systems and accidents as being inevitable or normal. And what he was alluding to was the idea that in certain industry, in certain areas, in certain industry, that accidents and disasters are normal within the confines of that particular industry because of their socio technological complexity, as the case may be. So he eventually identified what is referred to as two main dimensions within that particular theories of normal accidents, and he introduced these ideas of interactive complexity, and also introduced the idea of loose tight coupling. So he introduced those two ideas of you're looking at interactive complexity, you're also looking at loose tight coupling. So he introduced this particular concept, which is claims he claimed that actually together they determine a system vulnerability to accident or disaster. So we're going to look at how does this particular theories actually work, and looking at some of the interesting aspect of the theory before we move on to the other theories on high reliability organizations. But I should mention at this stage as well that you remember one of the points I mentioned earlier was on interactive complexity. And interactive complexity, which was introduced by Charles Perrow, he refers to the presence of unfamiliar or unplanned and unexpected sequence of events in a system that are either not visible, or you're looking at situations where it is not immediately comprehensible to those who are responsible for their management. So that is what it referred to as interactive complexity in that regard, where you have the presence of unfamiliar, unplanned and unexpected sequence of event that is not familiar to those or visible to those who are responsible for their management. And he also went on to clarify the ideas around tight coupling system as being one that is highly interdependent, that those systems are highly interdependent, more like if you think about it from a system point of view or an ecosystem point of view, they are neatly jointed together. So I'll be looking at be playing with these ideas and try to expose you to the reasons why these are really relevant to think when we're thinking about crisis management within the organization. So one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that there are several thousands, there are a lot of theories within the field of safety, crisis, disaster management, or emergency management theories, and as well. So within the business continuity management, I think for today, for the emphasis, our attention is on the normal accident theories, and we'll be looking at the high availability organization theory. I've mentioned that the key thinkers around the normal accident theories is proposed by Charles Perrow back in 1984. He was writing a paper after in the aftermath, as I've mentioned, in the aftermath of the Three Mile Island nuclear power disaster that happened in 1979. So he started playing with these idea of or that was the genesis of the normal accident theories. And when we start to look at the high availability organization, some of the early key thinkers like Rocklin and Porte and the rest started to play with these ideas of high reliability organizations. We're going to look at in the details what are high reliability organizations and of course what makes an organization to be highly reliable and what are the areas where the high availability organization theories kind of diverge from normal accident theories as well. But other things to mention is the notions of organizational accidents that have been put forward by reason in 1990s. You have limited safety by Sagan in 1993s and other interesting work by Wex and colleagues around collective mind and mindfulness and crisis management as well. And of course we also know that Barry Toner, for example, talks about the ideas around man-made disasters as well back in 1987 as well. But I'm not just going to concentrate on those other theories. We'll be looking at the two ones which is the center of my talk today. So we'll be playing with that ideas and see how that applies within the context, or can we actually apply them as well within the context of organizations as management. So the key issue that I want to try to get you to think about is to look at, are crises inevitable or can it be avoided? Are crises inevitable or can it be avoided? And these key issues will be at the center of my discussion with you today, because when you look at the theory of normal accident theory, which is the NAT that is proposed by Charles Perrow, what the theory centers around, it seems to emphasize the inevitability of certain crises within certain industry, maybe because of the natures of the organizations, maybe because of the natures of the complexity of the organization's activities in that particular industry. So that has an implication in terms of thinking about crises as something that is inevitable or something that we cannot avoid it. It is normal within the context of organizations operating in that particular area, and that is what the notions, the theories of normal accident theories try to emphasize, try to play around with, and try to explore in a much more details, and how that understanding can help within the field of crisis management or managers to be better prepared for the inevitability of crisis. But of course, if you then take the opposing view that crises can be avoided, that means you then toe in the lines of high reliability organization theories. And these theories, we're going to look at that in a moment, suggesting or implying that there is with a certain degree of measures put in place that crises can be avoided. So are these two theories, are they clashing or are they complementary in certain ways? We're going to look at this as well. We're going to explore this as well. So I mentioned that the ideas around normal accident theories is that it's kind of emphasize the fact that accidents or disaster are inevitable in a very complex, in a highly tight coupling system, in a systems where the organizations operate in a very volatile maybe environment. For example, if you think about maybe, for example, within the aviation industry or the nuclear industry, or you're looking at the chemical industry, for example, this will be areas where these ideas of accident or disaster being seen to be normal because of the natures of the operations of the organizations in this particular industry. So that is what Perrow is trying to allude to within the concept of normal accident theories, and try to explore that further, and provide some insight to say part of the reason is because of the complexity and the tightly coupled systems that exist within this particular industry. So the other point that I would like to also emphasize is to also look at the idea that organizations cannot train for every on a margin highly dangerous or maybe any issue that maybe is not clearly foreseen to the managers or to the crisis managers or to the leaders of the business within the organization. So that is the some of the underpinning thinkings around the normal accident theories. And also there is the issues that was also put forward around the deniers of responsibility, and also in terms of maybe faulty reporting and reconstruction of history that try to cripple learning efforts because of that, and that really makes accidents kind of happens within the context of the organization itself. So this has been put forward but within the context of normal accident theories, and we're going to explore these in a much more deeper in the next couple of slides. So there are some of the definitions of the key terms. So I will refer you to some of the keywords that you will find at the end of the lecture slide. So you can look at those. And accident in this particular context was referring to something that is unintended and something that is an unintended event, and is unpleasant event, if you like. And then of course what Perrow has within some of the constructs of normal accident theories is the linear interactions that occur in a much more like anticipated production sequence, like you looking at maybe design, equipment, and stuff. So this really relates more to industry, like as I mentioned, like nuclear industries, like chemical industries, like aviation industries, and things like that. And the all other things that I've also mentioned was the notion or the ideas around complex interaction as well, which is not linear. And I try to explain what that means because of the neatly connected or together of a number of activities that needs to occur within the organizations or within the industry. So it makes it almost like impossible to prevent any accident or disaster from happening within that particular industry. I think that's the point to note in that regard. So I'm just going to look at other things relating to this as well, without boring you so much with a number of things on these particular series. But I will encourage you to pick it up. You can read some of these things. There are interesting stuff that are out there. So I've actually explained coupling. I've explained tight couplings and loose couplings. I've mentioned that earlier on in my introductions. So like tight couplings, you're looking at maybe something like there's no slack. There is more like what happens in one when you have a direct effect on the other. So you're looking at situations where one issues in maybe one department, one areas, or one system within the organization can have a multiple ripple effect on the several aspects of the organization. So and this was what Perrow was trying to clarify within the concept of normal accident theories, and also obviously the loose couplings as well was also explained quite seamlessly, because you're trying to look at situations where there is a degree of flexibility to any sort of environmental stimulus that may happen to the organization. So that was really critical. And of course we will then obviously try to look at other areas like relating to these ideas of title couplings within the organization itself. So the other ideas or some of the key definitions is on the redundancy. Here you're looking at a safety device, for example, maybe an insurance mechanism that may put in place that can also help to explore that, to explain that, and also you're looking at in the connection of that within the wider context of of normal accident theory. So this can really help managers or business leaders to think very carefully in terms of what are the measures that can be put in place to manage the complexity of their activities, and they can reduce their operations as well within organization impact as well. So I think I would just you can look at the complex systems. You can also looking at some other areas where it exhibits maybe complex interactions. I think I've mentioned that in the first earlier slide, so we can possibly just jump this and looking at areas where this can be applied within organizations. For example, maybe a complex system is something that is highly tight couplings, and see reasons why this can have a dramatic impact on the organization activities as well. So the other areas when you start to looking at normal accident, where people start to question this is the areas where you're looking at failure in one part of the organizations can have a dramatic impact on the entire systems of the organization as well. So this is really important points to kind of make, and that can have that cascading failures or of different part of the organization. So that is really important to kind of take into account when explaining the concept of normal accident theories as well. So and we know based on the works that have been done in this area that cascading failures, for example, can really accelerate out of control and have a dramatic impact in terms of the business continuity of an organization. So that's really important to kind of take into account as well. So the area that I really mentioned, I want to question was that accidents truly are they inevitable or normal, as these theories has actually suggested that we cannot avoid some accident or disaster or emergency or crisis in certain situations. Should we therefore not prepare for them? Should we therefore not put measures in place to deal with the impact, to deal with the possible consequences if they happen? So that is the question that obviously is being put forward as part of the underpinning reasons for the opposing theories, more like not necessarily an opposing theories, but complementary theories of the high availability organizations, and we're going to see that as well in a couple of seconds as well. So when you start to look at the normal accident, so of course, I've mentioned that it was a research that was done by Perrow and Sagan and others, and they study accidents that occur during the normal operations like nuclear powers, like petrochemical plants. I've mentioned that in a maybe aviation, for example, accident rates. They look at accident rate. They look at the impact modified by numerous factors. And what is the key things was that they were saying that accidents are inevitable in complex and tight coupling systems. So that was the central ideas around these particular notions of normal accident theory. So when you're looking at this and you're taking it forward, there are a number of things you can pick out from this. I think one of the things that you want to look at that major systems accident, for example, start with accumulation of minor latent error. So and what that means is that most of these latent errors are human errors. They do not build up instantaneously. They seems to build up over time. And because of that, because of these complex factors that is tightly coupled within the organization, that can obviously then lead to disasters or accident within the organization, and they can change the entire systems of the organizations without altering the operational models of that organizations as well. So that's the key things to kind of take away from these ideas of normal accident theories when you're looking at the human errors and accident theories in this context. So I think these kind of sum up what Perrow was trying to explain in terms of when you look at these quadrant for example, you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. You're looking at the issues around the linears and the complex one, the interaction that is happening within those ones that are coupling maybe tight, and then you on the downside you're looking at the loose part. When you maybe like school, for example, colleges, for example, will be under the loose coupling areas when well, but those are the tight couplings for organizations like dams, or maybe that deals with dams, for example, or power grid, for example, would be those type of organization, rail transportation, marine transport, airways, for example. But when you start to looking at organization that operates in a tight couplings and in a very complex different environment, maybe nuclear weapons, for example, nuclear plant, DNA, aircraft, for example, chemical plants, space missions, and military early one is this would be organizations that are operating in a very tight coupling environment. There uh, accidents in one single part of the organization or one part of the system can have a ripple triple effect on the organization. So that's something that obviously managers need to take into account and has implication, of course, for the field of crisis and business continuity management as well. So the other point, I think I've already explained this in terms of the more tight coupling the systems is or the organization becomes, the more the risk tends to increase. So for example, like maybe minor manufacturing companies, for example, that's maybe producing maybe perfume or whatever simple manufacturing production processes will be considered to be low risk compared to organizations that operate in a very tight coupling environment like nuclear plants or space these emissions. Those sort of risks will have increased, and of course that has obviously implication as well for how organizations should manage or should better prepare for the management of crisis within that organization as well. So that being said, I think I don't want to dwell so much on this. So I've tried to explain the ideas around tight coupling, and obviously we're also looking at loose coupling systems as well. So I would encourage you to kind of pick the reading up and see how obviously you can apply this within the context of organizations. Which organizations will be operating in a loose coupling environment or in a tight coupling environment, as I have shown previously. So that is something obviously you want to maybe pick forward and see how you can apply those within the context of organization. So I've mentioned some of the issues around redundancy, and that there's need for all redundancy mechanisms that needs to be put in place to we have a probability failure rate. Because as you add more redundancy to the system, so the overall system reliability will kind of degrade. And I mentioned something like maybe insurance, for example. Does that really relax people from taking appropriate measures to prevent this thing risk from happening, knowing that they have some form of insurance these measures or cover in place? So that's really important. And there is also the issues around where it's mentioned that organization needs to have like a backup systems, which are often maybe humans, and they may sometimes aware of one another and influence others' reliability, and this can lead to what has been classified as the um, relaxation if within the teams that is responsible for managing the crisis or disasters within the organization itself. So that will be the key areas obviously that organization needs to be very careful about. So, but of course, I would say don't dismiss the normal accident theories. They can take their case to the extreme, but don't dismiss their warning. And what they say is that the normal implies that it is likely to happen with normal organizations. So we know that accidents or disasters is not, we should be expected. It's something that should be expected. And so that is what one of the key message that obviously you can take away from what I've been saying so far, that it is normal to be human. We all relax if things go right, and we all know that sometimes organizations we can cut corners when we get busy, and because maybe we just feel that things are going well, and then of course we all do what we have done before, and then of course the lack of negative response kind of reinforces our belief that perhaps the rules were too maybe strenuous, so that we start cutting more corners as well. So these are some of the things that obviously that you don't want to take very lightly. And those dealing with high consequences operations as well have this luxury of being normal as well, because they just consider it to be, yeah, it's expected, it can lead to that relaxations within the organization. So don't dismiss the message of the normal accident theories at all. So, of course, that will lead me to the notions of high reliability organizations. I've looked at the work of Laporte, for example, and colleagues that have championed these ideas of high reliability organizations. And one of the things that obviously that we were I posed earlier, one of the key questions I posed earlier at the start of the lectures was like, are accidents normal or inevitable? Accident inevitable or avoidable? So you start to look at accidents can be prevented through good organization design. So that's what this theory is about, high reliability organization theory, talking about the fact that accident, disaster, crisis can be prevented if you have a proper organizational designs and management in place, and that safety should be the priority of every organization. So and the fact that he's trying to emphasize that redundancies kind of enhances maybe safeties, and also in terms of maybe duplications and overlap that can exist within the organization. I think one of the key things is that this particular high reliability organization theory was trying to emphasize the need for a culture of reliability, something that will enhance the safety of the organizations by actively encouraging, uniform and appropriate response to operations within the organization. So this is something that every organization needs to be take very seriously. And of course, I should mention that continuous maybe operation in terms of maybe training, simulations can create and maintain high reliability operations as well. So that's one of the key things that you start to look at, the ideas where a number of organizations, a number of people will start to talking about this idea that indeed we can actually design some measures, we can put in some measures, we can put in some tools and structures in place to prevent disasters, to prevent crises, especially from within the context of organization from happening. So that's really important to mention. And so the high reliability organization, obviously, you can look at some of the things that I've mentioned, like the rigged, maybe the oil industry, for example, where a platform is in design in deep water. We saw what happened with the BP deep water disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, and of course the wider impact of that on BP reputations and even financial costs as well. So we know that obviously it is absolutely essential to put in some measures and tools in place to prevent accident and disaster from happening. And that is what the high reliability organization theory seeks to achieve in that particular context. So what is a high reliability organizations? So one of the things that was mentioned was these ideas around work group that functions in high stress environment. These are organizations that function in a very high stress environment, organization that obviously operate in a highly complex, highly tightly coupled, or with high levels of uncertainties, and like the nuclear, I made mention of nuclear industry, nuclear organizations, space missions, and the rest. These organizations operate in a very high stress aircraft, for example, high stress this an environment, but they have fewer adverse events than expected. So these organizations, despite operating in a very high turbulent environment, but they've managed to reduce the number of accident or casualties or disaster that they may experience. So they are seems to be exempted in a way from normal accidents, as we were talking about earlier on, that accidents are normal or inevitable in certain industry. But these high reliability organizations, because of their natures, because of certain things that they have that is ingrained in them, these exempt them from that idea. So that's really important to kind of take into consideration as well. So the high reliability theory so obviously has these five characteristics where was and those characteristics, for example, like preoccupation with failures, where these organizations are questioning what could happen. And then of course they also believe in this reluctance to simplify interpretations. They always more complex things are always more complex than seems. So they question, they like to challenge the status quo, and they are very sensitive to operation and in terms of looking at what are we doing, where are we going, and so and they have these commitments, interestingly, to resilience as well. Will we stop maybe the chain of error? So they want to stop the chain of errors. They have this um, very huge culture of commitment to resilience within the organizations, and this is what really makes them unique. This is what makes this type of organization to be unique, and they always like to maybe apparent maybe the deference to expertise. For example, they like to question the status quo. They know that things are not always as they seem to appear. So, and this is really some of the thinking, some of the culture that really makes this organization to be quite this thing unique in a sense. And of course, we're going to see what is the implications in terms of how this actually makes the high reliability organization theory to diverge from the normal accident theory. So of course, I made mention of these that some of the ID type of high reliability organizations, like they have a clear organizational goal. You can pick out this up within and read more around this, and very strong organization culture that can help them to navigate crisis and disaster because of their commitment to resilience as well. So that's absolutely essential in terms of when you're looking at this. The other part is I've mentioned these already, that these organizations, when you're looking at high reliability organizations, in terms of maybe their just culture, for example, they seems to have the ability to abandon work on safety, and of course to kind of maybe gain the grant, allow open discussion of errors within the organization. So these help them quite a lot, and they anticipate maybe problems, and of course they have this learning orientation as well. Mindful leadership is also part of what has been done. This particular extract was actually done from the health and safety organization, so it can actually help this organization to think very carefully in terms of management of potential crisis and prevention of accidents or emergency situations or disasters within the organization. So that's really important to take into account. So, so of course, I'm just going to quickly, just to highlight this without drawing so much in this. I will be wrapping it up soon. So we're looking at it's a counterclaim to crisis, to cancel normal accident theories. So why do some highly complex and tight coupling industry have near error-free safety record? And one of the answers to that was the ideas of high reliability organizations, because the normal accident theory is proposing, suggesting that because of the highly complex and tight coupling systems within industries and organizations, that accidents are normal, that disasters are normal, or crises are normal within those organizations. But we've seen evidence that some organizations are able to operate error-free, have error-free, near error-free safety record, despite being able to operate in what normal accident theories have classified as a high, complex and tight coupling environment. So the answers to that is because of some of the characteristics that this organization actually inhibit. So one of the things that obviously I just want to mention in terms of the values of the high reliability theories organizations, which the a culture of reliability that enhances safety, encouraging uniform actions by operators through streets, organization structures in place. There's a system in place that is working for these organizations that makes them to be unique, makes them to prevent crises or disasters or emergency situations within the organization. That safety is of their primary concerns, and they take it very seriously, unlike maybe some other organizations who may be operating in that same environment. So accident can be prevented through organization, a good organizational design and management. So that's the central values, the key takeaway when you're looking at high reliability organization theory. So with that, of course, I've mentioned some of these already. That if you put in some of those characteristics of that I've mentioned in place, you can truly prevent crisis or disaster from happening within the organization. And the other things, obviously, that you can look at, I don't want to go into the technicalities of these, like safety protocols for airlines and all that have been put in place. There are a lot. There's a whole lot of things that have been put in place to ensure safety, for example, within the aviation sector. And these are some of the things that is obviously helping to prevent accident or disaster from happening within that particular sectors, and that can really help to explain why some of these organizations operating in this space have been able to operate and maintain a very maybe nearly error-free safety record in that sector. So when you compare that to car, that can really be something that is really also an interesting one as well. So you need to understand maybe in the US and the UK, for example, you see the number of accidents but on our roads. You see, for example, in the UK in 2004, as an example, this is a dated data. There are over you're looking at over 40,000 car accident, for example. But of course, in the same period, you're looking at 20 accidents within the aviation sectors. So that gives you an idea of how high reliability organizations have been able to operate, and of course, they have that low record in terms of safety when compared to other industry, other organizations operating in other industry. So a belief of high level organization that accident can be avoided by organization design and management. The belief of normal accident theory is that accidents are inevitable in a complex and tight coupling systems, and that's the key things that obviously you can take away from that. Are they complementary? Yes. So the thinking, I don't think my message is not really to say that they are opposing each other. In fact, I will argue that they actually complement each other in a way. And one of the ways that obviously you can look at that is where you're looking at situations where if we understand that accidents are inevitable or unavoidable, does that stop us from putting measures in place to prevent one from happening? Absolutely not. And that is why the high level organization theories kind of complement the normal accident theory in that regard. So again, I think I think one of the things that you want to know is that what the NAT kind of suggests is that no more accidents within the aviation, within the nuclear industry, for example, is inevitable, but the HRO, which is the High Reliability Organization, is emphasizing that we can put some measures in place to prevent those from happening. So they need to looking at the implication of these for the field of crisis management. Wrap it up from there. So what does HR does for you? It kind of really helps you to recognize principle and practice shared by high reliability firms, permit you to kind of communicate, share some concepts of HRO with managers and workers, and of course that can help you to put in change of attitude within the organizations, and you can have a very good support for safety, that culture of safety, a risk culture that is safety minded within the organizations among the employees that can help. So, and again, sometimes they have mentioned that the HR, which is high reliability organizations, seems to be presented as a conflicting with normal accident theories. But I think the most important things to note is that the HR is as an organization can take an active step to reduce couplings and reduce interactions as well. So that's really what separate them from the other organizations that are not classified as high reliability in nature, and of course you can look at these accident trajectory in terms of the choose this thing. More this I don't want to go into into this, but of course I would just encourage you to kind of look at that some holes due to active maybe failures in the defense systems of the organization can actually cause a problem for the organization as well. So the key question is that the accident trajectory, obviously champions, was looking at active failures and latent conditions and multiple events as well, and of course helping us to understand much more better some of the systems and the structures in place that we can use to prevent this from happening within the organization. I've referenced the 3 mile nuclear power disasters. If I'm doing this in class in person, I will have show you this particular clip, and we'll have just look at this for a few seconds and looking at the implication in terms of the looking at it from the view of the high reliability organization theories and the normal accident theories. That will have given us a much more broader perspective in terms of that. Remember, when I started lectures referring to the idea that high reliability organization theory actually evolved as a result of Charles Perrow's work back in the aftermath of the 3 miles of nuclear disasters that happened on the March 28 in 1979. That was what gave birth to these theories of normal accident theories, and of course we could have also looked at this. There are a wide range of example in terms of operations that we could have also explored much more details. But of course, these concepts of high reliability organization theories and normal accident theories kind of really speaks to the heart of organizations at the point where situations where organizations are highly reliable, are highly efficient, and it can really help them to prevent disaster from happening. So that is the point where I'm going to call it a day. So these are some of the readings, some of the references, key references. Obviously, you can go back to, and some of these materials obviously are also uploaded on the Moodle Blackboard. And of course, if you obviously needed any help, any support relating to this, of course you're more than welcome to get in touch with myself, with Justins around this, or maybe you're even thinking of taking these ideas of high reliability organization theories or normal accident theories further by investigating this maybe in your dissertations, or and see looking at the application of these for organizations within the context of COVID-19, or you want to explore these at the PhD level. You're more than welcome to maybe possibly get in touch and we can have a conversations around and how you can develop a proposals around these areas as well. So next week we'll be looking at organizational resilience. I believe that's what we're looking at next week. So I'll be looking at organizational resilience. One, we're looking at what is organizational resilience. We'll be looking at some of the drivers of and the enablers of organizational resilience, and we'll also look at from bouncing back to thriving. How does organization do all these exciting lectures ahead? And I want to encourage you to kind of maybe get engaged and see what you can do to really complete this course successfully. All right, so thank you so much, and of course I will see you next week.